Okay, well, so just one last segment here, just to go into, you talked about how stats can move public opinion, and that's what you're talking about with the 2.5 million DGUs a year. I think that it's a good transition to talk about the mass shooting counter at GVA, because that's what you guys are most known for, of course. And there are obviously critiques of how you do that. We've discussed it a little bit offline, but I thought it would be good to include it here too, right? So you guys use what has now become sort of the media standard for what mass shooting means, which is 4 or more injured, not including the shooter, right?
Injured or killed, not including the shooter. Yes.
Right. And so this produces a much larger number than a lot of other methodologies, right? Like, for instance, the Associated Press has a different standard. Mother Jones has their own standard. Associated Press is closer. Sort of the older way of looking at mass shootings was 4 or more killed in a single incident. And obviously, if you use the 2 different methodologies, you can get very different numbers. I think, what do you got? What's your number at now? It's over 600.
Right,
right,
620 or something. But see, I think you just did what a lot of folks do. You conflated 2 different subjects as one. There's mass shootings, there's mass murders. Mass murders is an FBI definition of 4 or more killed. Now, that could be whether it's a bombing or a shooting or a stabbing or whatever. So when Mother Jones and all of them, they derive mass killings, mass murders, and that's 4 or more killed. And that's fine. That's what that's why you write a methodology. And, if you look at us, we have both numbers up. We have both mass murder and mass shooting, because they are 2 different things. To blow off, and I'm not saying you're blowing off, but to blow off thousands of people who are shot each year that by sheer luck they're not dead, that they shouldn't be in this count. We are open kimono on our mass shooting number very intentionally. I want to see everything where there's 4 or more shot or killed on the record, and then you, the blogger, you, the journalist, you, the advocate, can go into those numbers, look at the subcategories, and say, oh, well, that was a drive-by shooting. We're not going to count that. Or that was a domestic violence in a house. We're not going to count that. Even though the same number of people die in the same quantity of victims in the shootings. So that's where we are on it. We are open kimono. We want to say, here's the number. You want to do more research on the number? That's fine. That's what we're here for. Right.
I understand. And I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping track of 4 or more people injured in a shooting. The problem comes with language and how this number gets used in media, which is anytime there is a mass public killing, people will point to that number as though there are everything in there is similar to what has just happened in Uvalde or Parkland or
I
Las Vegas.
Can't make that assumption. I don't know what how people infer. I can't make that.
You
assumption.
Haven't seen that?
Oh, I see how people write, but I can't see how the readers infer. That's not. I mean, that would require mind reading on my part.
Sure, but and you probably heard this critique before, but the problem with that count, in my view, is that it lumps in a lot of shootings that are very different from one another. There are different issues that lead to those different kinds of shootings, and so I don't know how valuable it is to lump them together, other than to make people think that something like Uvalde or Buffalo, or what have you, happens much more often than it does. Which I understand what you mean is like these people still got injured or killed, and that it doesn't mean they don't matter or that we shouldn't think about these issues.
Saying. That's kind of what you're saying, that they don't matter.
It's not at all. But you can't solve. Let me just finish my point, and then I'll give you some time. You can't solve a shootout situation during a drug sale or a shooting into a crowd that's gang related in the same way that you can solve these mass murder incidents that one person commits at a school or in a public place, they're very different problems. I mean, isn't that right? I mean,
Well,
they
certainly.
require different solutions. And so taking them and lumping them all together, it might be useful data to look at long-term trends. You know, your data only goes back to 2013. I understand that, you know, that's just the limitation of reality. That's when you started studying it, and that's fine. But, you know, I just think rather than add context, it takes context away by putting all these things together as though they're the same problem in society and potentially have the same solutions, which they don't.
But you could make that same argument about any aggregate. But what we look at and what we're very vocal about is there is not a single solution. We have never said there was a single solution. Domestic violence mass shootings, gang mass shootings, a lot of those are all different than going into Aurora Theater or Uvalde. Those are different, and we know that. That's why when you look at the gross number, it has a bunch of subcategories that then provide the texture. Now, do I like that they use the big number and don't give it any context? Not really. But they're going to use the number they're going to use. Whether I made it 3 or more, 7 or more, 2 or more, whatever the number that we pick, somebody's going to have a complaint with it because
Sure.
It's not going to be enough. And one of the reasons that the gun rights side has a problem with it, and that I've heard verbalized more than one, it really makes you guys look worse. It's just not a good number for you, and I understand that. That's not why it's there, but it doesn't make gun ownership look good because it makes you see something that maybe it's not really there. And I agree with you. Contextually, mass shootings is a diverse category. We put all those other variables in each individual report. So if you look at mass shootings, you can tell which ones are school shootings, which ones are gang violence, which ones are domestic violence, which ones are bar fights, and the like. So you get but you have to have a base, and our base is just, the word mass shooting. Mass is a measurement of quantity. That's all it is. It's not a measurement of quantity it's just a measurement of quantity. So you have to put the other variables in there to give it context. That's what we do.
Yeah, I understand. Just to me, mass shooting, I think for the vast majority of regular people, when they hear that word, they think of the public mass killings.
Well, the ones that I see, they also look at drive-bys.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys on the right don't really, and Mother Jones is another example, don't really like talking about drive-bys and gang violence. Different issues, different solutions, and that we all need to look at that there are different solutions, and that needs to be emphasized.
Sure, and I would also apply this critique to the Associated Press's basic count because, like you mentioned there, the majority of where incidents where 4 or more people are killed in a single shooting are actually domestic violence situations where someone murders their family in their house, which is a different, again, problem than something like Buffalo.